Hi, this is Chike Coleman, that's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Home Edition, the show where we sit in our homes in our most comfy clothes and tell you about movies that we think are awesome. And our summer series is continuing this week with two movies that are fit for the summer. We're continuing the theme we started with heavyweights, and we're talking about meatballs, but because for some reason the world has decided to give this to us, we're talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, leading up to the third and hopefully final film in the franchise, Bill and Ted Face the Music, um, which is a personal favorite of mine and one that I think Sanford hasn't seen in a while, if at all.
A while. Yeah,
But
it's
we're going to open up with Meatballs. And Sanford, do your best magic that you always do and tell the people what Meatballs is about.
well. Let's say that we I brought up Meatballs because we were talking about heavyweights in the last episode, I think, and Heavyweights was a summer camp movie set in the '90s, and I made an analogy to Meatballs, which is a summer camp movie from the late '70s, and you had never seen it or even heard of it, I think. So
No.
I thought, well, we had to rectify that. So that was my suggestion. So Meatballs. Meatballs was actually the first big vehicle for Bill Murray, and it came after he had had some success on Saturday Night Live. So to a certain extent, this was a solo vehicle for Bill Murray. Meatballs takes place at a summer camp, just a sort of average summer camp. Bill Murray is the head counselor and is in charge of the counselors in training. And so the movie opens with Bill Murray, and we are introduced to his character waking up in the morning when it's the day or two before the campers come. It's just the counselors getting the camp ready, and he gets on the loudspeaker and proceeds to do a Bill Murray kind of monologue. And we're introduced to his kind of wild and zany character. Well, we proceed then through a little montage of comedy scenes of the counselors getting the camp ready for the kids. And then comes the big scene of the kids getting on the buses to go to camp. And I will tell you that this is exactly what my experience was like when I was a kid in the 70s going to
Really?
camp. Yeah, except for the school buses. We had, but anyway, it was exactly like that. You would go to a place where everybody would meet up. There'd be some buses. They'd assign you to the buses like that. And then we're introduced at that time, first of all, to a kid named Rudy, who's being dropped off at the camp by his dad. And they never actually explain why Rudy is sad or why his dad seems sad. When I was watching this, I inferred that maybe his mom had passed away. But
I thought the same thing.
yeah, they never said anything about that. It's just kind of, hey, here's a sad kid getting dropped off. And the other thing that we're introduced to at that time is the other camp up the road, which is this super expensive camp of rich kids who we, of course, immediately hate and are meant to
Yeah.
hate for the rest of the movie. So the movie proceeds from there through a series of, the stages of camp. The kids come in, they're assigned to cabins. Of course, Rudy is assigned to a cabin with some of the other characters that we've been introduced to. And, Rudy just seems really down on his dumps and morose. So in the early stages of the movie, Bill Murray's character takes a liking to Rudy and starts spending time with him and sort of, ingratiates him into some of the things that Bill Murray likes to do, including jogging in the mornings, and hanging out in the evening. I thought that was kind of a fun scene of them playing blackjack with peanuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as the movie goes on, we're treated to some of the sort of cliches of summer camp movies, like the dance with the girls.
Right. The summer romance in here is just too insane.
Right. Yeah, actually, it is I'm trying to think. It's a co-ed camp. So there are female counselors, and there's a female lead counselor who Bill Murray has a relationship with, and we'll talk more about that relationship in a few minutes. There's also a camp director, a kind of lovable loser guy who everybody makes fun of, named Morty. Morty.
Yeah.
They kept calling Marty on purpose to make him angry. And there's some great sight gags of them putting his bed in different places because apparently he's a very sound sleeper. The movie culminates in a fairly traditional camp versus camp showdown. And wouldn't you know, and again, I'm going to talk about this more in a minute, but wouldn't you know it, the camp showdown comes down to a running race, and the camp's best runner has been injured, so Rudy steps up to run the race. And actually, the advice that Bill Murray gives him is very good. So there's a race that Rudy runs against an adult, and in fact, in the end, Rudy wins. Everybody lifts him on their shoulders, kind of a happy ending, and then the summer is over and everybody goes home. So that's the plot of Meatballs. It carries us through the arc of camp, as seen primarily through the character of Rudy and Bill Murray's character.
So do you want to give your impressions first, or you want me to go first?
I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, so I love this movie for one basic reason, because it does the reverse of what Heavyweights does.
How's that?
It focuses a little bit more on the adults than the kids. The kids get their time, sure, great, fine. But learning about how these adults get that time to be as immature as the kids are is amazing. The thing that you mentioned, my favorite thing already, is what they do to Mortimer. Every time he ends up in a different place, I lost it. I'm like, oh, this is where that meme comes from. This is where, like, because that piece of the movie has been parodied or done multiple times in different movies, and I just love it. Just everything about it is amazing. I love the relationship between Bill Murray's counselor character and Rudy. I feel like they have really great banter together. What the audience doesn't know is that there are 2 sequels, and this is actually a film series. I'm not going to even entertain the idea of watching the other 2, because nothing is going to compare to what this felt like.
It would be like watching Bill and Ted #2.
Oh, don't do that. That would be that's for sequel.
Did Bill Murray do the sequels? I don't even know.
What?
Did Bill Murray appear in the sequels?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I think he was wise. He bailed after.
But yeah, I really loved just the camaraderie that came across from not only the kids but the counselors, and I love that there was immaturity on both sides, because in Heavyweights you see the adults really always being the responsible ones, but in Meatballs, nah, that's not gonna fly. They've got to be as crazy and as wild as the kids, but in different ways. So I really enjoyed myself with this.
So,
with this one.
All right. What you got? Anything else on it before I lay into it?
Yeah, the romance for me was hokey. I didn't care.
The Bill Murray's romance with Roxanne, the female
with
lead
the whole
counselor?
no.
Yeah.
You put Bill Murray with someone, you got to make that person equally as lovable as him. And I just didn't feel like Roxanne gave me that vibe. Not to mention when Al turned up in the story, that didn't none of the romance really made me go, I want to see them together. No, I didn't.
Right. So the romance, I mean, to me, I'm with you. It absolutely wasn't necessary. And in fact, I thought it actually detracted. You can hear my cat in the background. I thought it detracted from the movie because, again, we keep watching these movies through a 21st century lens, but the sexual aggression that he exhibited towards her, it was, I mean, there's the one scene where, he was kind of tackling her on the couch and she's telling him no, and he's like rolling on her and stuff like that. And they play it for laughs, and I'm sure that to an audience in the 70s, it would have been played for laughs. But, I mean, watching this in today's day and age, it made me extremely uncomfortable.
And the same thing happened in Ghostbusters when he was wooing Dana. You had scenes like that all the time.
Right.
Except for, to make it more funny, he was doing it mostly solo.
Now, I will say, talk about Bill Murray and having a female lead. I mean, Ghostbusters is a good example that he needs an actress who is a strong character who can stand up to him to really play off of. And I think that works much better in Ghostbusters. And so anyway, yeah, the romance I didn't really didn't love in this one. So here's my big ultimate problem with this movie, and it totally didn't click for me until I watched it recently.
What's the problem? Tell me, I'm curious.
So they have this combat against this other camp, or this contest against this other camp, and
which is brutal, by the way.
Sorry.
which is brutal, by the way,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
things happen to make it
Yeah, I mean they keep
much more
cheating and stuff like that.
intense. It's not
Yeah.
even the broken leg is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's serious competition and cheating in there. So also the fish, right?
Mm,
The
yeah.
so there's this, they're getting womped on by this other camp. And then, they have this nighttime meeting where, Bill Murray gives this big speech about how it just doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, I
Just
love that.
doesn't
It was like,
matter.
that doesn't
And
matter.
he makes this mantra that just doesn't matter. And he says, even if we win, it just doesn't matter. And I was like, oh, that's great. That's a very Zen kind of thing. And it's a great attitude with the kids and all that. What happens? Very next scene, Rudy wins the race. They put him on their shoulders. They're cheering. We've entirely forgotten about the message. It just doesn't matter. All of a sudden, it matters because they won. And I
Yeah,
just,
the about face is incredible on that.
yeah, I was like, oh, yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, I remembered that he won the race, but I had not, either when I was a kid when I saw this or whatever, I hadn't picked up on the sort of, the clash of ideas. But anyway, yeah, that just kind of bummed me out because I thought that actually there was a really good message. He's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're losing this, but yeah, no, as soon as they won, it all sudden mattered.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, the last thing I'll say about this one, to me, this is one of the movies, probably the movie that put Bill Murray on the map. I think after this, he might have made Stripes, and then after that was probably Ghostbusters. So, but in terms of creating a character or, giving him a vehicle to create this Bill Murray character, to me, this is really the beginning of that. And he made a career out of it. I mean, he made a career even spoofing it in Zombieland,
Oh
where,
yeah.
playing himself and stuff like that. So, but he's great in this movie. I mean, he's full of energy. I'm sure tons of it were improvised, but I mean, this movie would be a lot. We wouldn't be talking about this movie if it weren't for Bill Murray.
I'll say this about Bill Murray. He may have that affable charm that, wins everybody over, but I think, it doesn't come from a desire to be funny. It just comes from an ability to just say what he thinks in a way that just becomes effortless. And from what I've heard from him, in his personal life, he's a good human being, really. And I think that shines through in his performances, not just in the stuff we know him for, like Ghostbusters, Groundhog Day, Zombieland, but in movies like this.
Right, because and this movie is more nuanced. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of the scene in the bus station, uh,
Mm-hmm.
where he sits down and sort of talks who's Rudy is running away. He talks him back into coming back. He's a very human person. He's a kind person, and you see this side of him that you're right. In some of the other later movies, that just got glossed over. But yeah, I really believe that he is. This is showing some of his best skills, and especially again, before he became too much of a cliche of himself, because
Mm-hmm.
he actually does show some range in this movie.
All right. Well, I would say that if you like heavyweights, then I would recommend Meatballs, but skip the sequels. And Sanford, you would not recommend this because of the about face, or are you
No, no.
already?
I mean, I recommend it because, I mean, well, it's a good summer movie. I mean, I recommend it for that. I recommend it for Bill Murray. But yeah, I was a little bummed out by. I just feel like the, the movie kind of lost. It doesn't really have a message. I mean, the message is, if you're a bummed out kid, look for a really cool adult like Bill Murray. But beyond that, there's not really an overarching kind of takeaway from this movie.
So speaking of bummed out kids, the next movie in our docket is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So I have a history with this film because when I was like 5 or 6, I saw it and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, mostly because of the whole time travel angle. Like, for me, time travel, great, because I had just seen Back to the Future. Then I get exposed to Bill and Ted, and you don't pay attention to how hokey this is or anything like that. So essentially, what happens and I still don't understand what I'm actually saying here, but two 18, 19-year-olds have a band called Wild Stallions that they deeply, truly believe in. And somewhere way, way, way in the future, there is this time council that knows that Bill and Ted and their music are going to save the world. So they send Rufus, played brilliantly by the late, great George Carlin, back to these rock stars' teenage years to get them to go throughout history to get help writing the song that saves the world.
No.
And
They got to pass their senior year of high school, or else the
too, because
band's
they
going to
have
be
passed that
split up.
history test. And to do that, they go back and they talk to Abe Lincoln, George Washington. There's so many different people in there that I can't even name them all. But they spend time with these historical figures and basically get the historical figures to believe in themselves by virtue of seeing what they accomplish and saying, hey, because you did this thing, you're going to go on to do this thing, dude. You're really rad. And, things like that.
And bringing them to the future helps too.
Bringing them to the future, exposing them to what they become is hilarious. I think when I saw this, the thing that stuck out to me is something that stuck out to me as a little kid, showing Abe Lincoln the money he's on and how important he becomes in society, and him kind of being like freaking out at how important who he was becomes in the future. I think that was really great. Wasn't George Washington involved or Thomas Jefferson, one of the two?
There were other old white dudes, but I don't think those guys
I
were in
feel like it was one of those two.
it. Beethoven, right? Ludwig
And I think
Beethoven,
Beethoven too.
Freud,
Wasn't Beethoven?
Rude,
Oh my God.
Joan
There's
of Arc,
so many
Genghis
likable
Khan, Bob
characters that
Genghis
are in
Khan.
this film that it makes it enjoyable because it's a little bit of a history lesson with like California dudes, but also not. Um, so here's the thing. My love for this movie is based on a couple of things.
Okay.
What happens when you take the historical figures to a mall and have them shop, and who the guys end up falling in love with? Because every girl, I don't even know how to say this, they realize that the women that they like in the past are smart, but they also like them because they're attractive. And the fact that they went out and get these women to be their girlfriends is amazing. Because
Well, hang on now. Rufus went and picked him up for the guys. So, I mean.
Right, but they had a connection through conversation, and that helped.
They had true, but this is where the time travel part comes in. The only reason they had that conversation is because Ted said to himself, "Say hi to the princesses."
Yes.
If he hadn't said that, would they ever have met? Yeah.
So I forgot to point out one really obvious thing about this movie. These boys are dumb as hell.
Yeah.
Like the prototypical California pie in the sky, just their dreams are only the dreams of success that they built up in their heads and nothing else.
Right. To get Eddie Van Halen to do a video with them, it was about the highest they can possibly dream of.
But for some reason, because of how much they learned about history and what they learned about themselves in the process, it makes it almost like a step above a guilty pleasure. Like, help me. I can't articulate why I love this other than the stupidity and what they learn and how happy they are from the experience.
This movie is way more than a guilty pleasure. This movie rocks. Yeah, this is great. I mean, I had seen this movie in the past couple of years because we watched it with my son, and he kind of liked it. I think he was about 8 or 9. Okay. But watching it again and sort of watching it critically, this movie is so good on so many levels. I mean, first of all, the plot holds together beautifully.
Yeah, it does.
Is rare in movies like this. Usually there's like little faults and stuff like that, but this movie is like a crisp, I don't know, like let's say it's like 100 minutes long. This
Okay.
movie, I mean, it rolls along, it never lags.
True.
They do a lot of fun with the time travel part, especially in the last like sort of 20 or 30 minutes of the movie where, you know, they need to, for example, they need to think of a distraction to get Ted's dad to not look in the other direction. And he's like, you know, mate, use a tape recorder, and then like, you know, all of a sudden there's a tape recorder going off in the background. They came up with all this great stuff, and yet it hangs together really well. I mean, the plot makes sense. It actually, you know, and I love that part. And I love that, you know, like you tied into, they actually do grow as characters. I mean, it's a theme for us on the series, but give us characters in a movie who actually learn something, not learn something about history only, but learn something about themselves.
Right.
They do. I mean,
Yeah, they do.
they actually, you know, to a certain extent care about something for the first time beyond just, you know, being in their band.
Themselves.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's what makes them such, I don't want to even say this word because it feels like a sin here. Valuable characters. They make themselves valuable people as a result of those experiences. Now, whether that carries over to the sequel, I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that.
I think we'll find out soon. Well, you know, I'm gonna get all literary on you too here. So, a great movie that I love. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Do you know
I've
the
heard
movie?
about it.
Okay, maybe there'll be a future in the movie.
Maybe.
The movie's great because it has these two guys who are actually characters in Hamlet, and the movie is about them interacting with Hamlet. And I'm not going to get into that, but they're two stupid guys. And yet all this interesting stuff happens around them, and their stupidity is part of why it happens. And I love that about Bill and Ted too. I mean, their stupidity makes them approachable to
Yes.
us to be sympathetic, and yet they go through all this process of great stuff happening, and it's funny because they're so stupid. And that's just the best part about this movie is that you're not laughing at them. You know, they are the vehicle for the humor, but you're not laughing at them, but they are ridiculously stupid.
Here's the thing I'll say. They're ridiculously stupid and they're likable, but it's how they mature that keeps you wanting to know where they go next, what they do. There are stakes
But
in
don't
that.
watch the second one. Wait, you want to know where they go, what they do, but don't watch the second
Yeah,
movie.
because it's just like, okay, I'm going to be very blunt with our audience. The second one is an acid trip. Can you agree with that? Is it an acid
I
trip?
think you're giving it too much credit.
Oh,
The second one's a cash-in movie. They're
yeah.
like, gee, okay, we already sent Bill and Ted through time. What can we do next to make more money out of this series?
Oh, let's send them to hell.
Right.
And
get Death to play bass in their band.
Oh my God. The fact that Death comes back.
I do got to criticize one thing. I would say this. I mean, and again, this is also a theme of our show and some of these older movies. The female characters, I gotta criticize, are incredibly one-dimensional.
They are bimbos, but remember what time this came out in and what the characters were supposed to be.
I hear you on that, my friend. It's disappointing how, and you know, I mean, how little that they do with that. And, you know, it's just, yeah, it's the time that this film came out in. You know, it's just a bummer. It's a wasted opportunity because there could have been even better humor than they have. So there you go. That's one critical aspect.
I agree with that. But what I will say is this film features somebody I actually know.
That's right. Yes. Talk about that.
Inside the franchise. Bill and Ted's mom, and I'm not...
Hang on. Bill's stepmom.
I'm sorry. Bill's stepmom.
Missy.
In this film, it was my teacher in community college on film. And the character's name is Missy. And the actress's name is Amy Stock. And watching it back again, there's no more brilliant an actress in this movie. Considering the bimbos we get time with, than Missy.
You're right. She plays her part, which is a bimbo part. She
Yes.
plays it very well, and there are some good laughs in there in terms of her just like, oh, hey, look at all these these adults who are historical figures, but she doesn't know that.
Yes.
Suddenly in her yard, in her house, cleaning her house, which is kind of a
She
fun
is better
montage.
than the princesses by far.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that going into this as an adult, as a 33-year-old man. She is the best female in the movie. So credit to her. I'm glad that she's going to be returning for the third and final film in the franchise, Bill and Ted Face the Music. So I'm excited. But next week,
Yes.
we're going to continue the history lesson just a little bit longer, because we're going to be reviewing something that I've already seen, but not in the way you might think. Has to do with some money and has to do with some articles. I think I need to see a president. I think I've only got one shot at this. So we'll have to talk to you about that next week on Real Reviews Home Edition. And there will also be an additional film that's probably marked for a letter in the alphabet that's far down the list. We'll see you next time. Have fun, everybody. Bye, guys.